Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do this video in regards to understanding the head, hand, and heart connection. So there is a logical and a spiritual perspective on this kind of unity or trinity between the head, the hand, and the heart. And so first, before kind of explaining the logical and the spiritual perspective, we just have to kind of break down each component of the body to kind of understand how it all works together when in unison or in unity. So the head is the seat of your thoughts, logic, and reason. It also it's the seat of where ideas come from with thoughts, critical thinking, and overall, the head kind of represents engagement. Now, when you're looking at the heart, this is more of the seat of the emotional body. Obviously, it's the place where love happens. It's reflecting upon values and your connection within what you're doing or within a community or within the world. It's like kind of like the seat for your feelings. And overall, the heart represents enablement. Now, the hands is pretty easy. It's the part of the body that represents action. So something, whether it's like painting a fence or fixing something in the house, you're actually physically doing something with your hands. And the hands represents enactment. So you can look at the head, hand, and heart connection from a spiritual and a logical perspective. The logical perspective, people do use this a lot in the world of persuasive communication, what are they called, like keynote speakers and things like that. And it's also used a lot in business development. And so Aristotle said that a way to move an audience, which is basically persuading people, is through the elements of the logos, the pathos, and the ethos, which basically is an appeal based on intellect, emotions, and the speaker's character and charisma. So when you have all three of those in unison, that is what kind of helps form persuasive communication. I guess when you look at certain leaders in the world, one really clear example would be somebody like a Tony Robbins, because he gets like people super hyped up. He has a very charismatic personality. And then, that personality taps into people's emotions. And, the guy is smart. He's not an idiot, but he has this way of engaging people to make people believe in all of the stuff that he tries to sell, which is through like these abundance type of programs and things like that. And so people start to believe it because he is a very persuasive type of human being that uses charisma and this really upbeat personality to, I don't want to use the word indoctrinate, but just persuade people. So spiritually, there is a very fine-tuned energetic connection that happens. This is where I think it's a lot of this creative energy happens, and creation just happens in general when you combine the head, the heart, and the hands. There is a reason why people love planting and cultivating a garden. And there's also a reason why everybody, well, maybe not everybody, but people love moms cooking. Think about a mother who cooks. There's an idea in her head like, I'm going to cook spaghetti, and this energy is flowing from her head through the heart center and out through the hands. So if you think about energy that comes down from the divine or whatever, it's channeling through kind of that crown chakra, and it's transmuting itself from the brain through the heart and then out into the hands. So it's almost this flow of energy that if you've ever studied Reiki or ever had Reiki done to you, that's how a lot of healing happens. It's not the healer that is necessarily the person who is healing you. It's the energy from the divine and from God. So it's the light that the energy healer is transmuting from the divine, and she is bringing it into her head, and then that energy is flowing through the heart center. So hopefully love, light, health, healing, feeling whole and complete, all those really positive values are running out into the limbs from the hand into the person's body. So there's a really divine and innate combination of a lot of, like, I don't want to say like a magical force, but just a very powerful force and a loving energy that happens on a spiritual side of when you create or connect the head, the heart, and the hands. And I think it's why a lot of people really value certain things like fine art. It's because um, you have an artist who goes, say, into a meadow and they just contemplate and think about the meadow. And then obviously that meadow or the forest, the ocean, whatever they're looking at, that natural landscape, generally, it could be still life as well with fruit or people, that thought process is getting transferred into the artist's emotional body through their heart. And then once they feel the emotion of it or the vibe, whether it's really light and bright and beautiful, or maybe it's a little bit dark and mystical, that emotion eventually comes out through the hands, and he's actually putting action toward painting and creating a picture. So I think it's why a lot of times, I don't know if people really understand why art is very healing or very therapeutic, but a lot of it has to do with tapping into not only your emotional state, but it's also kind of, empathizing and understanding what the artist has had to put in, head, hand, and heart wise in order to produce this really beautiful classic masterpiece. Regardless of if you hate religion or not many people walk into a Gothic church or a Baroque church in Europe and is like, "Wow, this place is ugly." It's like you're still like magically blown away by the beautiful creation of this structure, because there was so much thought process and energy that was dumped into creating this masterpiece that could have happened over the course of 10 or to 100 years. Some churches, it took a decade. Some churches, I think the Notre Dame in Strasbourg, France, was 44 years, I believe. And then there's other churches that have taken like 100 years or more to complete. And, if you look at the big, popular, famous church in Barcelona, the name is escaping me at this point. That church is still not even done. And it was kind of created by that famous architect that I'm now losing the name on. So here's the thing. So we have a head, hand, and heart connection, but we also have an engagement through the two parts of the body. So when all three are in unison, it's almost like a trinity or a triangle is connected, and the energy is at its utmost, most optimal state of being. Now, the thing is, for example, when you connect the head and the heart, a big example of that is singing. A lot of times you're thinking about the song or the lyrics are in your head, but there's an emotional component, like the lyrics or that beat of the music or something is very inspiring to you. So the connection between the hand and the heart, an example of that would be something like singing. If you were to connect your hands and your heart, something like creating public art, or things like you see graffiti on the wall and stuff like that, it's like the artist has some form of emotion and it's coming out through the actual creation by, let's say, painting it onto the side of a brick building. When you have something like the connection between the head and the hands, that's where actually a lot of the designing and the building of the structures happen. So, obviously you have an architect who's really thinking about, how can I design this building? So he's using a lot of his logical and rational mind, understanding the math and the geometry and everything that he studied, and he's creating this design through his hands. And then eventually construction workers and engineers kind of help develop that structure. So the head and the hand connection is a lot of designing and building, I guess you could say, like some form of creation in general, on a structural standpoint. So it's really fascinating once you start to think about certain things, whether it's in your life or in just in, I guess, spirituality, or in the realm of well-being and health behavior changes in general. Obviously, like a massage therapist, all of that action is coming through the hands, but there is also a little bit of, there's some thought and logic, because they have to understand how the muscles move and work. And there could be some form of emotion there. So if they are a little bit more of a massage therapist on the energy healing side, they definitely can absorb that energy like a sponge from people. So they have to learn how to kind of, block and channel some of the energies just so they're not the sponge that's sucking up all that negativity from the client that's on the table. But for the most, so to some degree, it can be a combination of all three: the hand, the head, and the heart. To some degree, it's probably a little bit more of head and hand because they have to kind of think logically about the flow of the massage, and how the muscles move. And every massage therapist has its own rhythm and stuff like that. And to kind of work with the striation of the muscles, which all muscles in the body have a different striation. It's a little different. So, yeah, so if you've ever wondered why you loved mom's cooking, or you kind of wonder why gardening is so therapeutic, it's because there is this divine connection between the logical, the emotional body, and the action. So it's the logical, the emotional, and then the action. It's the three things that are kind of combined and put into one, whether that's creating a great meal. A lot of times, a lot of people find cooking therapeutic, especially if they're doing it for friends. Like, people love potlucks and stuff like that. Or I go to a home church, and a big part of that is, you talk a little bit about a sermon, and then they have dinner together, and there's a lot of that enjoyment that's made. But also, I think the person who's creating and cooking the meal also finds some kind of satisfaction and enjoyment from that. So anyways, these are some thoughts that I have. If you have any thoughts about this topic, I'd love to hear what you think, whether it comes from a logical or a spiritual perspective. It is very fascinating to think about, and how this kind of applies in your life, especially if you're on some form of path of well-being, or if you've ever used art as therapy, whether that's you actually being the artist, or just absorbing, that kind of energy from that actual art piece as a form of healing. So, yeah, anyways, thank you for listening. And if you'd like, you can subscribe to my channel to help me build it. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and have a great day. See you next time. Bye.